Time to discuss Malik Cunningham, the quarterback for the Louisville Cardinals. My name's Brian Smith, and I'm the publisher at Inside the Knights on Fan Nation, powered by Sports Illustrated. And this is going to be an exercise that is very straightforward. If Louisville is to defeat UCF this Friday night, Malik Cunningham will almost certainly provide a big game for the Cardinals. To stop that, UCF has to do a few things that will confuse the young man and also make him very mechanical and not an athlete. To put it bluntly, traditionally speaking, this is a player that's been more art than science. When he's outside the pocket and he has the opportunity to use his legs to create more opportunities, to gain time, to throw it, or just take off and run, that's when he's dynamic. When he's just inside the pocket, he doesn't make the same reads and same opportunities happen. For whatever reason, that's just who he is. Now, until otherwise proven, you just got to make him stay in the pocket. Of course, that sounds easy. But to break that down, let's go in depth a little bit more about what he can and what he cannot do based on his history. Now, this is a young man that's played the last 3 years in some capacity. He's increased, and I'll go over some of the numbers here in just a second that I have pulled up on my computer. But first and foremost, just put it in this perspective. For any of you, I'm just going to treat it like you haven't even heard of him. For any of you that don't know anything about Malik Cunningham, know this. From a physical standpoint, he could play receiver, he could play running back, he could play safety, etc. Very gifted. If you allow him to escape the tackle box, meaning literally outside the two edges of the offensive tackles, that's when he's at his best. There's just no doubt about it. That doesn't mean he can't get hot and complete passes from the pocket. That's not the point. It's just that he completes passes that tend to go for bigger yardage. Last year against Notre Dame, he was 16-19 for like 130 some yards. 16-19 sounds great. It's over 80%, but they didn't have any touchdowns rushing from Cunningham, and they didn't have any touchdowns passing from Cunningham, and scored 7 points. Notre Dame's offense played terrible in that game, but still won 12-7. The reason? Cunningham was not explosive. Louisville does not possess the overall talent to defeat a lot of teams unless Cunningham makes it happen. That's at the ACC level. Now, UCF is not really a non-Power 5 school in terms of talent. They could be right in the middle of the ACC, no problem. The question is still the same, though. Can they be disciplined and not allow him to get outside the pocket? You must stay in your rush lanes. You must, I know defensive linemen hate the following statement. You must give up the idea of getting sacks just easily by speed rushing up the field, because he'll cut up underneath and then cut to the outside, and then it's game on. And you have to make sure that when you tackle him, you wrap up. None of that shoulder bump stuff. Wrap him up. Do it in as textbook as possible. At every player that they will go against this year, regardless of position, Cunningham is likely the most physically dangerous because he can throw and run. He's a quarterback that's just really gifted. You cannot allow him to escape. Even one play where he gets free on the perimeter with his arm strength, that's the other aspect of his game, and you can be in trouble. All right, now, with UCF's defense, let's talk a little schematic here. They can be multiple, and Louisville's going to run 2, 3, 4 receivers. They run a lot of different things too. This game is going to be complex. It's not something I could explain in 2 hours, let alone 20 minutes. But with that being stated, UCF's going to use some version of a 4-man front. That's what they've done the last couple of games. They may run some 3-man line with Big Cat standing up, etc. But really, just look at it from a mathematical standpoint. How many people are on the line of scrimmage? Just count. 4 will be the most likely answer based on the first couple of games. How well Big Cat plays is important, as well as the other 3. But the most important thing here, the interior. Ricky Barber, who is from Louisville, by the way, he played at Western Kentucky last year, and I expect him to have a big game in front of his hometown team or his hometown fans and friends and family. That's going to be big for him. But Kalia Davis as well. If you get inside push against this young man and make him move his feet, make his eyes look down, Cunningham is susceptible to interceptions. Last year, he had 12. The year before, he just had 5, but they didn't really try to get him to throw as much. Now, here are a couple of things to look at just from a rushing standpoint and what he did. Going through some of these games, it's just incredible what he could do running the football. For whatever reason, and this surprises me, and he must have had a couple of big runs or whatever, Louisville did not do very good against Virginia last year in terms of the actual game, but Cunningham got loose a couple of times for touchdowns running the football. For a quarterback, this is incredible. 20 carries for 197 yards, which is 9.85 yards per carry, a couple of scores, but they only scored 17 points. That's very odd. I'd imagine they had some turnovers there. He also had games where he just didn't get loose at all. Miami and Pittsburgh completely just throttled Louisville's offensive line. They haven't been very good. And he had 7 yards against Miami and 3 yards against Pittsburgh. That's pathetic. But what is in front of you matters. If you don't have room, you don't have room. Against Notre Dame, he got loose a couple of times, 7 carries for 49 yards, but that's the game he couldn't really throw. They kept him in the pocket, and they made him become a mechanical player. That's the goal. If you get sacks, that's the bonus. Pittsburgh's sacks last year were incredible. They were fantastic at that, but you have to keep him in the pocket. Now, the other thing with this, like the Boston College game, 17 carries for 133 yards. And that game, he also didn't even score a touchdown. But when you're moving the chains that much, you can keep your team in it. Sadly for them, they still lost. But when he is a guy that gets outside the pocket, he can create plays. The other part of this, he's not afraid to launch it. This is the part that personally concerns me. And this is the last aspect. And I'll get into the one player I think that is very important and try to define it in terms of a little bit of a schematical view. When UCF lines up, they use what they call the night position. That's Mr. Armstrong. He's the transfer from Kennesaw State that's played so well. He's second on the UCF defense with 10 tackles so far, and he's pretty good in pass coverage, and he's also a guy that just wraps up all the way back to his high school days when he had over 400 tackles during high school before going to Kennesaw and being a two-time All-American. That is a very good football player. Against Cunningham, he will have multiple roles, and quite frankly, he could have the biggest role of any player on the UCF defense, just depending on perception, but this is one way I look at it. He will be playing over the slot quite a bit, or what they oftentimes call the overhang. What is the overhang? Outside the tackle box, but fairly close, back 5-7 yards, he has options. He could be a blitzer. He can be a guy that takes the short flat. He may take somebody in man coverage. He may have a specific run responsibility or a combination thereof. Again, this is complex, but it's okay. It's just that he handles it better than most guys. Watching him play from the booth at the bounce house, this is a fun football player to watch. And UCF fans should be happy that Armstrong is with the Knights. He gets it. And he also makes tackles. Bottom line, do you get guys on the ground? That's if you're any form of a linebacker, and he's kind of that hybrid spot playing the night, part safety, part linebacker, you need to be able to be consistent with tackling. Against Cunningham, that's not an easy task. He can make just about anybody miss, and he's 200 pounds. He's a guy that can run over you, too, if you allow him. Armstrong is going to be at least partially responsible for taking away some of the checkdowns. UCF has not gained a single sack yet this year, which is shocking considering their defensive front four talent. That's probably going to change against Louisville, and it could also lead to something else. If Armstrong takes away some of those plays underneath it, he just checks down to 3-4 yard play and they take what they do. Maybe he launches a pass that he shouldn't. He did have 12 picks last year, and that was part of his problem. He would force it if he got frustrated, being under duress, staying in the pocket, couldn't get outside the edges. Big Cat and Kalia, Montalvo, all these guys, if they just contain him inside the pocket, keep him in there. Don't allow him to go outside or underneath the defensive end because he overruns his rush lane. All contained, all execution. I know it sounds boring, but it is absolutely pivotal for the UCF defense. If he can do that, meaning Big Cat on one side, Montalvo on the other, that's when I brought up Davis on the inside. And the hometown boy, Mr. Louisville, for this game. If they can do that, the D tackles get a little bit of push, you could see some really bad passes. That's when, most quarterbacks, honestly, struggle the most. Malik Cunningham is no different. Bryson can be there for a pick. Last week, Tatum, he had a pick. The linebackers are pretty good in coverage. They don't get much credit for that, and I probably haven't mentioned it enough. They've done a pretty nice job. UCF's passing woes have been outside the numbers. And that's 90% of teams in college football. They fall right in line. There's no help out there if it's a corner. It's you against the world. So that's another discussion for another day. But if you can take away the immediate checkdowns, the running back just passed the line of scrimmage, everybody does it, and a little tight end curl, etc., some of those basic things, and you can attack the flats in terms of the screen game. Louisville will definitely run screens like most teams that run any version of the spread. That is where Bryson Armstrong can be a big factor with that, but it all works in conjunction with each other. If the defensive ends don't do their job, just as an example, and Cunningham steps up and then zigzags underneath, say, Big Cat, well, he's out in the flat. He has the option to run, or he has the option to act like he's going to run, head towards the line of scrimmage, and boom, here comes a safety or linebacker. They give up their passing game responsibility, and then a little flip pass to a wide open skill position player. And Louisville has some athletes that can be a 50-yard touchdown real quick just on a 5-yard pass. That cannot happen. Must keep him in the rush lanes. That's first. Then guys like Bryson, who I think will be in the line of fire all game long, can make plays just by keeping him at the line of scrimmage, make him run. If he gets 7-8 yards, so be it. Do not allow the easy, just little wild pass to the receiver, to the running back over in the flat that nobody's with. You have to make him run. Like the game against Virginia, they scored 17 points and he had over 100 yards rushing. That's okay. Do not let him get outside the pocket and just make the little easy pass. He also has the arm to just bomb it. He's got an arm, big time. But that's not his strength either. It's just making plays ad lib. They're going to try some things to get him outside the pocket. They'll run waggle, bootleg, and just flat out roll him out and to see what he can do and probably launch one at some point. Wouldn't be surprised at a trick play either. These are all things that Scott Satterfield, the head coach for Louisville, has been known for, but he has not gotten Malik Cunningham to that next level. Went from 5 interceptions in 2019 to 12 last year. That's very curious. Now, the percentage is not like overwhelming, but at the same time, if you look at his numbers, I believe he went up just about 1%. Yeah, it's 2.8% of his passes in 2019 were picks. The next season, 2020, 3.9. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that was 7 interceptions. That's not good. Part of that's probably on the receivers or drops or deflections, but the bottom line is interceptions kill a football team. Turnovers kill a football team. UCF has a chance at that and to do much better if they keep Malik Cunningham in the pocket. Last point, and I'll get you out on this. If UCF can frustrate him early, and I'm talking about the first or second drive, not like this late first quarter, the first or second drive, UCF will have success. They need a sack. They need to physically harass him, not mentally. He needs to feel pain. Beginning and end. He must be hit. I'm not talking about a shoulder push. I'm not talking about his hand got touched. I mean shoulder pad meets ribs, period. With that, everybody have a safe day. I'm Brian Smith, publisher of Inside the Nights. Everybody be good.